All right, let's move on to architect contract MOU.
All right. What, Mike? 348. Okay, so what I previously discussed is we thought we would have to do a new AIA contract in the sense that we're doing a CMC, both our attorney and the architect's attorney feel now that the construction manager is serving more like a general contractor because it's a constructor, that our current AIA agreement with DLA is applicable. So we would just do the MOUs that are project specific. And within this MOU, I was able to add some language based on the board's concerns that the 9% for DLA will not be added to the construction manager's fee. That's the 4% fee, or any change order that does not require architects or engineering. So the feedback I took from the board back to the architect was that if there's, if something happens with a project and a subcontractor makes a mistake and we have to go back and re-pour cement, or they forgot to put in the rebar, and it's not funny because it happened at another school that I was as I was investigating construction managers, but that's not something that we didn't want to see. The board was concerned that the architect would be able to charge us under those people's mistakes if it didn't require. And the architect agreed, and she understood where the board was coming from. And so we were able to negotiate in language that says if there's any change orders or issues that result in, that do not result in additional drawings or engineering, that they will not be able to assess the 9% fee on that work. We also were able to limit the 9% fee on the projected overhead and profit of the construction manager. I'm still trying to, we stopped conversations as of Friday. We were able to not connect today. I've been pushing back and forth with Carrie pretty good on, is there an opportunity for us to relook at the 9% now that we're hiring a CMC? So the latest version is her reasoning of why it should still be 9%, because she feels that this is work that they still need to do with the CMC as it refers to the bidding process and the RFPs and those types of things. So I will continue to try to have that discussion with Carrie, but I want to make sure that there's no other concerns with the MOU besides that.
So the same thing, you want us to get any comments we have as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, and I know you said you needed a little more time, but I need that as soon as possible. And,
Can we have it by end of week? Would there be a problem with anybody?
I told them I would get, because we've got 120 pages of reading between two agreeing, actually closer to 200, between two reading and the audit, that I'd get it to them by Sunday.
Mr. Gritch, and I just wanted to, is this kind of getting to where you were concerned you brought up the last couple of meetings?
I don't see any kind of limit on this, right?
Architect's compensation, on page 351.
Yeah. So she's still no limits, 9% of that, other than, I mean, if somebody doesn't put rebar in cement, that we're still obligated to pay for the breakup and redo the cement. I would imagine that would come to us with no cost.
Right.
For failure to do that. So
I'm using that as an example.
I know you use it as an example, but one of the concerns was the trying to keep the limits on these costs, which in my read of the last construction project we had here, the GC's costs got out of, in my read, got out of control. So that's all my big concern is the architect and the construction manager, that these costs are somewhat limited to some degree, whatever the best way that would be.
So that's what I tried to accomplish by saying if it doesn't require architect or engineering, that those dollars should be pulled out of before she puts her 9% on. And so that's why I was able to get to 200.
Unfortunately, the example you gave shouldn't have an impact.
No, I know it shouldn't. I know. But I'm just trying to raise the point where, there is no cap on this cost. And so I don't, to think about.
All right, so can we have everything back to Kevin by Monday? Any issues? All right, so give it back to Kevin on Monday on both the Nicholas contract and this.
Now, we did talk with, I'd like to go back to this, Mr. Walsh and I did meet with Carrie after the CM interviews, and talked about if we wanted to do a lump sum payment with the architect. And similar to doing the CMC with a max price, you know, Carrie cautioned us to say, hey, she'd be willing to do a max price, but she's gonna bid this out then at the highest end that she thinks all this stuff is gonna cost, and if it comes in under budget, we're still stuck paying that lump sum. So when we did talk with her about that, doing that type of arrangement, she said she'd be willing to do it, but she didn't think that was in the district's best interest. So that's why I tried to negotiate getting the CM fee, the CM profit out of there, and getting anything that, any change orders or anything like that that don't require additional architecture or engineering, that you can't bill us on those as well.
Because I think a better example, and I don't remember, Gary, you and Mike went through all of it, but on our last construction project, like a lot of projects, there were just a lot of extras at the end, weren't there? Or there were extras throughout?
There were changes, there were a lot of changes, so
So what,
the classrooms upstairs on the second floor were not originally going to be put in there. Then all of a sudden, because of the economy and everything, the contractors' bids came in lower than allowed that, you know what I mean?
Well, that would be one
so
of
that
those
would be an
examples where she
example where
would
she
bill
would
us.
have to do work, but I'm sure there were other changes
Like
where.
the field house, they dropped it, so they didn't have to pay the money to fill it up to the level it should be.
They'd have to
And
do
that
drawings
money
for
was
that.
converted into something else. I mean, they did things like that.
But my point is that, I mean, I'm thinking of other kinds of construction extras you got, like, you know, the square footage, the cubic footage of concrete was wrong, or you put in another, you know, some more fill, or had to work over, the guys had, you know, it rained for a week, so they had to work overtime, get an extra for a week's worth of overtime. What Kevin was able to negotiate, which isn't standard practice for architects, is those kinds of extras, since we don't need an architect to do anything for them, then you won't be paying the 9%. And again, I'm not disagreeing with your position, but you know, the struggle that our architect has is that's not the normal way things are done, so by what he's asked for already, they're already feels from carrying a firm, we're already making a concession, and you're asking us to make further concessions, and we have to consider those or not.
Any other questions on this? So by next Monday, get your comments on at least the construction manager and the
MOU for the architect.
Before you go to the next one, Matt?
Yeah.
Kevin, you didn't hit the last page on the item before, had you intended to?
Which was that?
On the
Page 347.
347.
Oh, this is good. This is another big thing. So this is something that I drafted with the attorneys. I think the board should consider this. It's ultimately, this is a draft. I don't know why it doesn't show up. Is it showing up draft on Mary Ann's? I don't know why it's not.
It's real light.
Okay.
In our mind.
What a lot of school districts have done out of state, when you get some of these magazines about different school districts across the country, when they do projects like this, they will put out a notice like this into not only the local newspapers, but like the Sun-Times or Tribune, that as we're looking to build a new athletic complex and facilities, that we're open to exploring the opportunities of naming rights. And so what I wanted the board to see with this was something that I had the attorneys just draft up, a general type of press release, and then we can figure out, you know, an example was, I did see one example of, and now obviously in Texas they take their athletics a little differently, but they had different naming rights for, you know, the Gary Gritchen Memorial Scoreboard and the Pepsi-Cola concession stand.
Let's make sure
And, you know,
the check
these
cashes first.
people were able to, companies were able, or people, you know, that had wanted to make donations or have naming rights, were able to do either specific projects within the actual complex, and then they had different dollar amounts. So an example would be like the overall athletic complex, we would want 250 or 500 or more, 500,000 or more, a minimum of a $500,000 donation. Maybe if you wanted, and then we could set it up either one or two ways, where we would just put a minimum dollar amount on the bottom, like which is that line in the bottom paragraph, or we could try to set up ranges where it says like athletic field would be a minimum of 100,000, concession stand minimum of 50,000, and that would allow for somebody to, either a company or an individual family, to put a plaque and get the naming rights of that building or facility.
But it wouldn't be granted unless the board approves it, right?
Right, that's why I'm bringing it to the board.
Okay,
You
no, but I
know-
mean,
I think it's a great idea, and I think somebody should do some research into pricing.
Yeah, and there's examples of that all around us. If you look at the Y and the displays Y, their whole nanatorium was donated by a family member who had swimmers, and so the nanatorium, it has the overall Y's name, but the nanatorium has that family's name on it. If you look at many of the private schools, like the auditorium will have a family name
Right.
with money that was donated for the auditorium and that. So we
Correct.
see it all the time, we just don't recognize it probably.
There's not as many public schools in Illinois. There are some that have done it. I know Vernon Hills has, I believe their stadium is named after a local business, a big business that's in their area. So it's more common, you'll see at colleges, universities. I think the University of Louisville is the Papa John Stadium, and you see different things like this all the time. So
Bob Skolnick, maybe you should take that back to Bob Uphues and see if he's willing.
well, I think we might need to not only do that, but we would probably go on a larger
The
scale.
landmark.
Yeah.
But we'll look at, does the board want me to draft another draft for the cow and put some minimums in here?
Well, let's do some research on it and see what's out there.
Yeah.
But I think that if you had that there for the cow, we can say, look at it and put it on.
Research in regards to,
What
Pricing.
their pricing and
Yeah, I
what's the,
wouldn't put anything in writing for pricing yet.
No, I think the name should come if they pay for the item.
I think the conceptual idea people are agreeing to, and I don't know that
Yeah.
you need more than that right now. You need to
Right.
do some more research and how you gonna market it. I'm sure if you do this, there's probably organizations that market this kind of stuff too.
right? Do we want the bottom part which says the naming rights and interested parties should be willing to donate it at least? Or do I want to take out that sentence?
see what
Just don't
comes.
leave
know
it
what
general
is,
right now?
Until you know what it is.
Yeah.
Well, when you say you know what it is, I mean, I have an idea from Kerry what the field turf will cost.
Right.
I have an idea what the tennis courts are going to cost.
So you want to,
So that's why I was saying, do we want to leave this general, or do I want to put in parentheses by these bullets, like a minimum of,
well, certainly if you get anybody, I mean, Mike.
If I give a minimum.
If you get
I got
somebody
you.
that pay for the cost of like the tennis courts, I think we'd have an easy time saying, okay, we'll name the tennis courts after.
Well, you could do it generally without putting a number. You could
Right.
simply say, we would expect a significant donation to cover most or all the cost of this.
construction costs related to?
Yeah.
This or this, and this,
Yeah.
yeah, so that,
Okay, don't get a dollar amount because you might get less than.
Sure.
Yeah, that's-
Okay.
You might scare
that's
people.
exactly what I'm worried about.
Does the board want me to should we do explore it with Carrie or with the attorneys if there's a marketing firm out there that somebody's contracted with, or just something that we would want to do, go back with Carrie, see if she's dealt with this, or CM if they've dealt with this, and then,
I'd go back to Karen.
Let's get some free advice first.
Yeah.
gotcha. Okay,
Do we do advertising in our stadiums? Do we hang banners from money we got from local businesses?
yes, Art has done that in the past. Like you'll see at, I think there's one insurance group, Tim, that State Farm or something, there's one or two basketball games, as long as we hang a banner at the basketball games, I think we got $800 from them or something like that. Sometimes you sell ads in the programs, but we have not done anything with naming rights since I've been here.
Or permanent signage.
Right.
Yeah.
You used to see a lot of school districts, what they used to do is back a long time ago, before these high schools were building these bigger stadiums with the restrooms, you used to see those Pepsi, like the two Coke trailers that we're gonna eventually get rid of and trash. But you used to see, like, they would park their Coke trailer there, and then for that free advertising, they would usually pay for the bottom of your scoreboard. They would help pay for your scoreboard by putting Coca-Cola under there or something like that, but.
Well, the only reason why I say that, because today, for the meeting, I went to a volleyball game, and on their score table, they actually had, like, advertisements rotating around. So that's donations to their athletic program.
Right, what happens a lot of times is that there's a company called Daktronics that specializes in stadium scoreboards and gymnasium scoreboards. And what they usually do is they sell you at a very, very low price the scoreboard, and then the electronic advertising that's on the bottom. They will go out and recruit vendors and recruit the ads, but they get to keep like 80% of that money, and the 20% goes to pay off your scoreboard. So there's different things like that.
Okay, so we've got some more work to do on this.
But everybody's okay with the concept from what I
Yeah.
understand. Okay?
All right, we're going to go into closed session now, talking about the personnel, student discipline, sale or lease of property and litigation. At this time, we have visitor statements. Does anybody want to speak over here? Seeing none, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois, enters closed session for the purpose of considering appointment, employment, legal advice or dismissal of employees, student discipline, sale or lease of land, and litigation.
Do I have a second? Second by Mike Welch. Mary Ann?
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Bishop?
Yes.
Mr. Ostoff? Yes. Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. Sins?
Yes, it is 8:50 right now. I would like to start the meeting at 9 o'clock.